What's up everyone? Today I want to talk about and give my review about the Fuji X-H1 and really just show and just say how everything is about this camera and just let you know about it. There are very similar features compared to the X-T2, the X Pro 2, same sensor, same battery. Is it all the same? Or is it something a bit different and more unique? So this is Fuji's flagship new camera, and they really wanted to go video heavy and really jump into it at this point. The X-T2 video-wise has pretty much been their baby, and especially with a new firmware update like 1080p, 120 frames per second, and a couple other things added, that also made that a viable candidate. But it has this in here and a lot more packed in. So there are a little bit of downsides I want to cover and some major annoyances, but let's run through the camera, break down each piece by piece, and go from there. I'm not going to get too spec heavy on this, so you can watch that somewhere else, but let's first start off by breaking down the build quality and some of its features, and just to see really how it is. So in regards to ergonomics, I feel like this camera is very comfortable for what it is. Showing a bunch of close-ups. It's an interesting mix between some things of the X-T2 and their medium format camera, their GXF. And with that being said, you get an interesting like 1-inch LCD screen up top. You get a great flip screen at the back right here that flips, upwards, downwards. It's not fully articulating. And the one minor annoyance is it doesn't go all the way down. But the interesting part is it can do vertical. If you're on the street and you want to, kind of do something like this, you can fully view it from there. And I actually really enjoy that they do something like that. Ergonomics of this are absolutely great. Now, the common argument might be is that, well, it's adding a little bit of heft to it. You're kind of taking away from the mirrorless standpoint. And I have to 1,000,000% disagree with that. This is a very, very lightweight camera. I come from an X Pro 2. I own an X Pro 2. And I think that's heavier than this is, and that's more rangefinder-esque. And that's another thing what might be a draw to a lot of people, is that this isn't a rangefinder. You're getting your more DSLR-like regular EVF right here. Very, very bright, very, very accurate EVF. I'm not a huge EVF user, but when I do, I was able to do everything that I needed. Your diopter's on the side right here, so you can change exactly what you need. The only thing I want to cover in regards to the EVF is that it is very, very sensitive if you're using both on. If you want the sensor to track your EVF when you're close to the camera, or if you want to do it when you're not near it, back screen is in use. And that being said, I was in Philadelphia doing street photography, and I was sweating a little bit, and I was wondering why the screen wasn't kicking back. There was just a little bit of like sweat, a little droplet on the sensor right here. And as soon as you would wipe that away, that alleviated and you could use both again. That being said, just if that ever happens to you, that might be a thing because some days are pretty hot. And if you're using this in a professional setting, you never know. But what Fuji does, and it's their bread and butter, is their external dials and how you don't have to menu dive for things. And that's one of the main reasons why I bought into the Fuji line myself, especially for street photography, because there's nothing you want to do where you're just like, going through the menu, sitting down, going down through everything. You've got your ISO button, you got your ISO dial here, your shooting modes right underneath and a little switch. And you have your shutter speed up at the top as well, your metering modes right under that, and pretty much everything is external as you go from there. AF on for back button autofocusing. You can exposure compensations a little bit, a dial just to the right of your shutter release. And from the GFX is this wonderful screen right here. Now, I do think that there is a bit of a battery draw with that, obviously, when you're using that, especially when you're shooting 4K too. I noticed that your battery isn't the best in something like this. It does okay, but I just think it draws for a lot more power. And instead of having a full day where I just went through one battery, I pretty much almost drained 2 batteries in the same amount of time whenever I go out shooting. So there is a lot going into this. Once again, I use the same battery as the X-T2 and the X Pro 2. So if this is demanding a little bit more power, noticeably, understandably so. And a couple of the big things that I have for me is the 2 SD card slots on the side right here. UHS 2, so they're faster and they're very, very good for what it is. The thumbstick little dial right here. So you're able to use that, move your autofocusing point. And the touch screen right here, you could also move your autofocusing point, touch to focus. So you get a lot built in right here. You get a lot of features, especially for the $2,000 price tag. $1,900, which I'll tackle in a second. And Fuji did the impossible, and they said they would never be able to put 5-axis in-body stabilization, in which they did with something like this. So for the lenses that you have that didn't have any kind of IS or anything, now you're good to go. But in regards to the 5-axis, It's okay. It's definitely not near a class where Olympus and Panasonic is. Maybe it's more or less near where the Sony system is, for that matter, but it still needs a lot of work, and I think they could do that through firmware updates and a little bit more tweaking. So be that as it may, if you're still looking for amazing IS, I'd probably look somewhere else. But the fact that it has this and something like this really shows Fuji's trying, and that's very promising. So the ergonomics are great. Crop sensor, it's not full frame sensor if you were still thinking so. 24 megapixels, X3 trans sensor, absolutely amazing. I really like what comes out of this. Probably the last thing I'll cover, like feature-wise and everything, or ergonomics, is the mechanical shutter is actually pretty quiet for what it is. Here, I'll just take a. I don't even really think you heard that. Now, it's rather quiet. I mean, obviously electronic is fully quiet, but for the mechanical shutter, it actually sounds very, very well. And you don't really have to worry about being too loud in a place you probably shouldn't be, within reason. Don't be weird. I noticed a lot of reviews out there not talking about stills quality much. They just jumped the video, which I'll talk about in a second. But it's stills quality. How's the image quality? How did it work in a real world environment? Once again, I was in Philadelphia doing some street photography just to really test how this was, how the dynamic range was and everything. And I absolutely think that this is one of Fuji's best. And if anything, it's probably a little bit better than my X Pro 2 in regards to real world autofocusing. The autofocusing in this camera is stunningly fast, stunningly accurate, snappy, zero hunting whatsoever. So in that regards, I'd probably give this a win, especially over my X Pro 2, which I really, really like. And the tilt screen absolutely worked as well. Once again, if you want to take a picture, I like to do kind of urban stuff as well. But even just doing your typical, like, hey, I'm looking down at my camera, taking away attention of trying to look at someone, it works absolutely fine because you have your tilt screen. But once again, if you want to take a picture of a building or something like that, you just simply flip this up right here, and you have this, and then you could go without having to crouch down, lay down on the ground. You're able to have a more convenient screen when it flips over like that, and you get that vertical shot that you want. And you have all your film simulation modes, which I don't really go into, but you have that Eternal, which a lot of people liked and Fuji brought into this stuff. So people really like that on the still side, but especially for the video side of things, because of the range it could bring you as well. Not talking about F-Log yet, but you have all your film simulations there, so don't worry about that. The other big thing is that face detection does work very, very well. Now, the one thing that Fuji touts is that now there's eye detect in these cameras, but only in stills mode. You don't get this in video mode. And you can only really use this in certain ways where you have to be pretty close up to the camera. You can't be too, like if I was about this length right here, it wouldn't track. I'd have to be a little bit closer for it, a portrait, for it to actually pick up. You'll have the face detect box right here, and then you'll have a little square go around the eyes. So it's not the best, it's there, but when you're close up, it does work. It's just not as good as they said. Plus, you can't be in continuous, you have to stay in your single shot AF to use that. So there's just some weird quirks with it. So if IAF is a big thing that you really want in a camera, I wouldn't look the Fuji X-H1 way. I think that they'll improve that in some kind of firmware going forward because Fuji's one of the best out there to do that. But that being said, I wouldn't recommend this, and you cannot do it in video if you want that feature. But face detection, rather good. And the last two things I'll cover stills wise is dynamic range, and along with Fuji and Nikon, they're very, very good with their dynamic range, and it works rather well. Not much to go into. You can recover your highlights, you can go into the shadows, and you won't get your blockiness or anything. Dynamic range is absolutely great with this camera right here, even though it's a crop sensor, which a lot of people have misconceptions about. The other thing I want to talk about is your ISO. I was in the Reading Terminal Market in Philadelphia, and I just like this one scene, and it's just this guy in between two window planes. I didn't spend a lot of time there, but I did shoot something at 3200 ISO, and it looks rather clean. I don't see a lot of noise on it. It may look a little soft, but other than that, you go up to 6400, and I think it's almost identical to that. So the low light in this, double thumbs up. So let's talk about the video that Fuji really tried to improve and step up in this, especially compared to their X-T2. And I think that they did a very good job with this, but there are some major flaws to it as well. Now, the biggest thing a lot of people want to talk about is the 4K video, and you do get 4K, 24 frames a second, but you can only shoot 10 minutes. Now, the weird thing is you have to buy the grip to really boost it. You turn on the boost, and then you can shoot up to 30 minutes. So that's just, I really wish they wouldn't force you to buy over a $300 grip to go with it as well to get that. But if you want the boost, you have to do that, and you have to go from there. And the other weird thing is that on this body, you do have a mic input, so you can use a mic, but there's no headphone jack. you have to buy that grip to get the 3.5mm headphone socket, so that way you could listen to your audio, which is kind of ridiculous, and a little bit of Fuji Y. You also get your full HD, your 1080p, 120 frames per second, which is absolutely great. Your 60, 5997, 24, and everything in between there. 50, 100, and 200 megabytes per second. And the only other issue is that this does 420 8-bit. It's not 10-bit, so you won't have as much of a range editing-wise. But speaking about range, you do have F-Log into this camera, straight into this. And the F-Log is absolutely great. But you do get that raw video look, and you have a lot of range that you could do to edit it in any way that you want. So the F-Log in this is absolutely great, and you have a lot of range to edit. But going back to two big things that people wanted, face detection for that vlogging or for doing videos and everything, and eye detect. Once again, eye detect, I tried everything, looked at the manuals, and then you come to find out that eye detect does not work in video. If it does, let me know down below. I literally tried everything and looked through the manual. So that doesn't work there. So once again, go Sony in that regards or somewhere else. The face detect does work, but it's still not good. You're still not getting that accurate autofocusing. Like, I was just outside in a really weird, just a quick kind of test, a vlog test, and it would focus behind me, it would hunt. And I had the same issue when I was at WPPI at the Fuji booth. I would be on someone, and then without me moving anything, it would just focus on someone's face in the background and come back. So it's still not there. The autofocusing continuous AF isn't the best in this. Now, you can fine tune it a little bit in the AF fine tune in the menu. But that being said, there's still a lot to work with, and Fuji isn't there yet. And I would look at Canon or Sony or others if you're still looking for better autofocus in video. So once again, the only couple of the downsides is the no headphone jack. You have to have the grip 8-bit, and that there's no zebras or waveforms in this as well. So if you're a real video person, I mean, you wouldn't worry about autofocusing because you're pretty much either going to rack focus by hand, use some kind of a rig, or just be manual, and you already have your preset focus. But you don't get some of the other stuff that you really need for video. So that might be a big letdown and maybe make this more of a stills camera. But for the price and everything that you get for this, and if you're in the Fuji line, I actually think it's very, very good. And I just want to link a couple more videos down below. Max Yuri does a great job breaking down cameras and everything, so I'm going to link to one of his down below about the Fuji X-H1. And I also want to do the Camera Store TV. I'm going to link them down below, and one of their Wood and Nichols films is because they shot something exclusively. They remade a scene on the Fuji X-H1, and you can really see what happens in a professional environment and how it was used, and it's stunning. The minor noises, you pretty much heard all of them. The only thing I really would add is that the screen would lag at times, kind of like the XE3, but not as bad. And I know you have to go in the menus to do some performance BS or something like that, and the only way that I could fix it wasn't even pressing the shutter. I'd have to do, quick turn off the camera, turn it back on, and it would work. But if you have this on after maybe a minute or so, the screen would start to lag a little bit, and that could throw off a shot or two. So there shouldn't be some setting you have to turn on or off. That shouldn't be a thing, but that's a minor thing because you could just easily turn your camera off and on, but you could miss a shot. So just wanted to say that as well. And besides you need a grip for certain things, that's that. So it really only comes down to two things, and it's probably one of the most popularly asked questions is, should you buy the Sony a7 III or this, because they're essentially around the $2,000 price mark? And would I trade my X Pro 2 for something like this? The easy answer is these are two totally different cameras. The Sony a7 III and the Fuji X-H1 are completely different. If you're in the Sony line, you're gonna stay in the Sony line. And if you want a full frame camera, well, that's the Sony a7 III. No doubt the video's better. The autofocusing is probably a little bit better, especially in regards to video. You're gonna be in that realm. But if you're a Fuji user, you're gonna stay in the Fuji line for the most part, at least in my opinion. These are two totally different cameras for two totally different users. Someone not looking to go full frame, they don't need to, they really like what Fuji does, isn't looking at a Sony a7 III for the most part. I mean, if you do, you want to go for it, absolutely go for it. But then you get into the whole debate of, Sony lenses are more expensive, Fuji has very, very good options, and one of the best image quality cameras on the market as well. Is it the best video camera out there? No. And plus, once again, if you really want a good video camera, actually get a video, actual cinema camera. But that being said, the Sony a7 III and the Fuji X-H1 have their own market for two different people. You're not going to be looking at the same. But if you want something that's way more dynamic in video, the a7 III is definitely a good option compared to something like this. But stills wise, I think they're both very good. But would I then switch out my X Pro 2 for something like this? And it's a tough call because I really enjoyed the autofocus on something like this. It was a little bit faster, the 325 hybrid points. The image quality is very similar, obviously. Same sensor, pretty much same technology in that matter. So I wouldn't swap out for something like this. I would want something more. But I love the ergonomics on this. I really liked having a tilt screen compared to what I don't with the X Pro 2. $1,900, I think it's $2,200 with the grip. I highly recommend the Fuji X-H1. And thank you for B&H Photo for sending this out for review. I wasn't paid or anything for this. These are all my thoughts, and go from there. Fuji X-H1, phenomenal camera. Highly recommend it. Would you jump up from an X-T2 to this X-H1? That's an interesting thing, especially since the firmware update gave you some of the options. But I know 2 or 3 people commented and said they absolutely didn't mind jumping up from the X-T2 to this X-H1. And it worked out fine for them. So make that debate for yourself, and you know, probably you would if you didn't mind spending a couple $100 selling yours and have an upgrade. But other than that, stick to what you're doing. Fuji's going to keep pushing out some stuff in the firmware, but the Fuji X-H1